exclaimed. "He's been hurting me every night." Osaretin felt like her heart stopped beating. "What do you mean, Efe? Hurting you? How?" Efe's voice trembled as she spoke. "He often comes to my room and does things to me, things that hurt and make me scared. I didn't know how to tell you, and I thought you wouldn't believe me, but he warned me never to speak about it to anyone." Osaretin's heart shattered into a million pieces. She hugged her daughter tightly, and tears started to stream down her face. Osaretin was a hard-working single mother living in Benin City. She loved her daughter Efe dearly. Every morning, Osaretin would wake up early to prepare Efe for school before heading to her job. Life was not easy, but they managed. Their small two-bedroom apartment was modest, but it was filled with warmth and love. Osaretin often thought about her late husband, who had passed away when Efe was just a baby. She missed him so much, but she found solace in her daughter's bright smile and lively spirit. Efe was a cheerful 10-year-old girl with big dreams. She loved reading and wanted to be a teacher one day. Osaretin did her best to be everything she could and support Efe's dreams, even if it meant working extra hours. One Saturday, Osaretin decided to attend a community event organized by her church. She rarely took time out for herself, but Efe encouraged her to do. "Mommy, you should go. You work so hard, and it will be good for you to have some fun," Efe said with a hopeful look. Osaretin smiled at her daughter. "All right, my darling, I'll go, but you stay with Auntie Itonha, okay?" Efe nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Mommy, I'll be fine." The event was held at a large hall near the church. It was a bustling one with lots of activities and people chatting, laughing, and enjoying the music. Osaretin felt a bit nervous as she walked in, but soon she saw some familiar faces from the church. "Osaretin, over here," called out Mama Imade, one of the church elders. Osaretin joined the group of women and they welcomed her warmly. As they talked and enjoyed the refreshments, Osaretin felt herself relax. She was nice to be around friends and not worry about work or household chores for a while. As the evenings went on, there was a dance competition followed by a raffle draw. Osaretin was laughing as a joke, Mama Imade told, when she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned around to see a tall, well-dressed man with a friendly smile. "Hello, I'm Osage," he said, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, I'm Osaretin," she replied, shaking his hand and feeling a bit shy. "I couldn't help but notice your beautiful smile from across the table," Osage said. "Mind if I join you?" Osaretin blushed. "Sure, you can join us." Osage was charming and kind. He had a way of making everyone laugh with his witty remarks and stories. He told them about his job as a civil engineer and his love for volunteering in the community. "You know, it's important to give back," he said earnestly. "Helping others makes the world a better place." Osaretin was impressed by his sincerity. They talked for hours, sharing stories and laughing together. Osage told her about his travels and his family, while Osaretin spoke about her life with Efe and her dreams for the future. "I've always wanted to open a small grocery store," Osaretin said, her eyes lighting up. "A place where people can get fresh produce and friendly service," she added. "That's wonderful," Osage said. "With your determination, I'm sure you will achieve it." As the evening drew to a close, Osage walked Osaretin to her car. They exchanged phone numbers and soon he promised to call her. "I had a great time tonight," Osaretin said softly. "Me too," Osage replied. "I look forward to seeing you again." Over the next few weeks, Osaretin and Osage continued to see each other. They went out for drinks, took walks, and even attended church events together. Osaretin was surprised at how easily Osage fit into her life. He was always kind and respectful and made an effort to get to know Ife. One Sunday afternoon, Osage joined them for lunch at their apartment. He brought a small gift for Ife. It was a beautiful book for girls. "Thank you, Uncle Osage," Ife exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. "I love it." "I'm glad you like it," Osage said with a smile. "I know how much you love reading," he added. As they sat down to eat, Osaretin watched Osage interact with Ife. He was patient and attentive, listening to her stories and answering her questions with genuine interest. Osaretin felt a warmth in her heart. It had been a long time since she had seen Ife so happy. After lunch, while Ife was busy reading her new book, Osaretin and Osage sat at the balcony, enjoying the cool breeze. "Osage, I want to thank you," Osaretin said, looking into his eyes. "You've brought so much joy into our lives." Osage took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Osaretin, you and Ife are special to me. I want to be part of your lives if you will have me." Tears welled up in Osaretin's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Osage, I want that too." And as the sun set, Osaretin felt a sense of hope she had never felt in years. With Osage by her side, she believed that better days were ahead for her and her daughter, Ife. As the weeks passed, Osaretin and Osage's relationship blossomed. They spent more time together, finding joy in each other's company. Osage often visited Osaretin and Ife at their apartment, and sometimes they would go out for family outings to the zoo, to the museum, or to watch cultural performances in Benin City. One Saturday morning, Osage picked them up for a trip to Ogba Zoo and Nature Park. Ife was thrilled. She had always wanted to see animals up close. The car ride was filled with laughter and chatter as Osage shared funny stories about his childhood. "Did you really get chased by a monkey when you were a boy, Uncle Osage?" Ife asked, giggling. Osage laughed. "Yes, I did. I was teasing it with a banana and it didn't like it at all. I learned my lesson that day." At the zoo, Ife ran from one exhibit to another, excitedly pointing out animals. Osaretin watched her daughter with a smile, feeling grateful for the happiness Osage had brought into their lives. "Look, Mom, the lions are so big," Ife exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "Yes, they are, my darling," Osaretin replied, enjoying the moment. As they strolled through the zoo, Osage held Osaretin's hand. "Osaretin, I feel so blessed to have you and Ife in my life," he said softly. Osaretin squeezed his hand. "We feel the same way, Osage. You've brought us so much joy and happiness." Their relationship continued to grow deeper. Osage was attentive and caring, always making sure to check on Osaretin and Ife. He would often surprise them with little gifts, flowers for Osaretin and books or toys for Ife. He also helped Osaretin with household chores, fixing things around the apartment and even cooking meals. One evening, after a delicious dinner together, Osage had prepared. They sat together in the living room. Ife was reading a new book, while Osaretin and Osage talked quietly. "Osaretin, I've been thinking," Osage began, a serious expression on his face. "I want to make this official. I want to marry you and be a father to Ife." Osaretin's heart skipped a beat. She had dreamt of this moment, but didn't know it would come so soon. "Osage, are you sure? This is a big step," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Osage took her by his hand. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Osaretin, and I want us to be a family. I love you and I love Ife so much." Tears welled up in Osaretin's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Osage, I want that too." Ife looked up from her book, sensing the emotional moment. "Mom, Uncle Osage, what's going on?" Osage smiled at her. "Ife, how would you like if I became your dad?" Osage said. "Really? You want to be my dad?" Osage nodded. Yes, I do. I love you and your mom very much. Efe jumped and hugged Osage. I would love that, Uncle Osage. No, Dad, she said. The next few months were a whirlwind of activities. As they prepared for the wedding, Osaretin and Osage decided on a small intimate ceremony with their close family and friends. The church where they had met was the perfect place to exchange their vows. On the wedding day, Osage and Osaretin looked radiant in yet simple but elegant dress. Efe dressed in a pretty white gown, serving as the flower girl. Osage looked handsome in his suit, his eyes filled with love as he watched Osaretin walk down the aisle. As they stood before the altar, Osage took Osaretin's hand in his. Osaretin, you have brought so much joy into my life. I promise to love you, cherish and to protect you and Efe for the rest of my days. Tears streamed down Osage's cheek as she responded, Osage, you are my rock and my partner. I promise to love you and support you for the rest of my life, she said. After the ceremony, they celebrated with a small reception at the church hall. There was music, dancing, and plenty of food. Efe was the life of the party, dancing with her friends and showing off her dancing moves. As the evening came to an end, Osage and Osaretin, alongside Efe, returned to their apartment. It was now officially their home as a family. They sat together in the living room, savoring the happiness of the day. Mom, Dad, today was the best day ever, Efe exclaimed, snuggling between them. It was sure, my dear, Osaretin agreed, looking at Osage with love. Osage put his arm around both of them. This is just the beginning of our wonderful journey together, he said. The months that followed were filled with happiness. Osage continued to be a loving husband and a doting father to Efe. He also supported Osaretin's dream of opening a grocery store. With his encouragement and financial help, she was able to rent a shop and stock it up with fresh produce. One day, as they were setting up the store, Osaretin looked around with pride. I can't believe this is really happening, she said. It's happening because you worked hard and never gave up on your dreams, Osage replied, giving her a warm hug. Efe, who had been arranging fruits on the shelf, ran over to them. Our store is going to be the best in Benin City, she declared. Osaretin laughed. Yes, it is, my darling, and we'll make sure to always provide the best for our customers, Osaretin added. With the store now open, their days were busy but fulfilling. Osaretin loved interacting with her customers. She made sure she treated them well, and many who were her neighbors and friends often came to buy from her. Efe often helped out after school, learning about business and customer service. Osage continued his work as a civil engineer but always found time to support his family. One evening, after a long day at the store, Osaretin and Osage sat together in their home, reflecting on their journey. Life has changed so much since we met at that event, Osaretin said, resting her head on Osage's shoulder. Yes, it has, Osage agreed, and I'm grateful for every moment we've built. And as they sat together in their living room, watching Efe read one of her many books, Osaretin felt a deep sense of contentment. She knew that life would have its challenges, but with Osage by her side, she believed they could face anything. A few months later, Osaretin discovered she was pregnant. She was overjoyed and a little bit nervous. She and Osage had talked about having more children, but she hadn't expected it to happen so soon. She decided to share the news with her family. Osage, my love, can we talk? She asked gently after dinner, her heart pounding with excitement. Osage looked up from his newspaper and smiled. Of course, my love. What is on your mind? He asked. Osaretin took a deep breath. I'm pregnant, she said. For a moment, there was silence. Then Osage's face broke into a wild grin. Are you serious? We are going to have a baby? Yes, Osaretin laughed, tears of joy streaming down her face. We are going to have a baby. Osage jumped up and hugged her tightly. this is a wonderful news. Efe, did you hear that? You're going to have a little brother or a little sister. Efe, who had been playing with her toys in the living room, looked up with wide eyes. Really? Mom, I'm going to be a big sister. Yes, my darling, Osaretin said, pulling her daughter into a hug. You're going to be a big sister, my love. Efe squealed with delight. I can't wait, and I'll help take care of the baby, Mom. I promise. The months passed quickly as they prepared for the arrival of their baby. Osage was attentive and supportive, always making sure Osaretin was comfortable and taking care of herself as much as she needed. Efe was excited and often talked to her mother's growing belly, telling the baby stories and singing songs. One sunny afternoon, Osage decided to take his family on a picnic to celebrate the upcoming birth. Finally, the day arrived when Osaretin went into labor. Osage rushed her to the hospital and Efe stayed with their auntie until Itoha. It was a long and exhausting labor, but Osaretin remained strong, with Osage by her side, holding her hand and encouraging her. You're doing great, my love, he whispered, wiping the sweat from her forehead, and I'm so proud of you. Hours later, they were blessed with a healthy baby boy. Osaretin cradled him in her arms, tears of joy streaming down her face. He's perfect, Osage. Look at our son, our bundle of joy. Osage gently stroked the baby's tiny head. Welcome to the world, Idahosa, he said softly. We love you so much. When they brought Idahosa home, Efe was overjoyed to finally meet her little brother. He's so tiny, Mom. Can I hold him? Of course, my darling, Osaretin said, carefully placing the baby in Efe's arms. Support his head just like that. You are doing great. Efe beamed with pride as she held Idahosa. I'm going to be the best big sister ever. With the arrival of Idahosa, their family felt complete. Osage and Osaretin worked together to balance their responsibilities, with Osage taking on more household chores and helping with the store whenever he could. Despite the sleepless nights and the challenges of caring for a newborn, their love for each other grew stronger. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Osaretin feeding Idahosa and Efe reading a book, Osage reflected on the journey. Osaretin, I feel so blessed to have you and our children. You have given me a beautiful life, and you have given me a loving home, he said, smiling at them. Together we can face anything, Osaretin replied. Life settled into a happy routine. Osaretin and Efe continued to run the grocery store, which was now more successful than ever. Osage continued his work as a civil engineer, often bringing home stories from his project and others. Efe excelled in school and loved spending time with her baby brother, always eager to help with his care. One Saturday, as they decided to have a small family celebration for Idahosa's 6-month milestone, they invited close friends and family to their home, filling the house with laughter and joy. Happy 6 months, Idahosa, Efe cheered, holding a small cake. Osaretin and Osage took turn in holding Idahosa as everyone sang a cheerful song. As the evening came to an end and their guests began to leave, Osaretin sat down with Osage. Thank you everyone for making this a beautiful day, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. It's our pleasure, Mama Imade said, smiling warmly. You and your family deserve all the happiness in the world. After everyone left, Osaretin and Osage put Efe and Idahosa to bed. Then they sat together at the balcony, enjoying the quiet night. Osage, I'm so grateful for everything we have, Osaretin said, resting her head on his shoulder. Our children, our home, our love, it's all so perfect. Osage kissed her. I feel the same way, Osaretin. We've built a beautiful life together, and I'm excited for all the moments we'll create in the future. As months turned into years, Osaretin, Osage, Efe, and Idahosa enjoyed a blissful family life. Efe continued to excel in school and was a great help with her little brother. Idahosa grew into a lively toddler, always exploring and bringing joy to everyone around him. Osage remained a loving husband and father, and Osaretin grocery store flourished like never before. However, behind the facade of their happy family, a dark shadow began to creep in. It started subtly. Osage, who had always been supportive and kind, began to show signs of impatience and irritability. At first, Osaretin thought it was just the stress from work. Osage was managing a large project and the pressure was intense. But as time went on, his behavior became more concerning. One night, Osaretin was busy preparing dinner in the kitchen. Ife was helping her with the vegetables, while Idahosa played with his toys in the living room. Osage came home late, looking tired and frustrated. "Good evening, my love," Osaretin greeted him with a warm smile. "How was your day?" "It was long and exhausting," he replied curtly, dropping his briefcase on the floor. Osaretin could sense something was wrong. "I made your favorite, jollof rice with chicken and plantain," she said, hoping to cheer him up. Osage didn't respond. He simply walked past her and went to their bedroom, slamming the door behind him. Osaretin and Ife exchanged worried glances. "Mom, is Dad okay?" Ife asked quietly. "He's just tired, my love," Osaretin said, trying to reassure her daughter. "Let's give him some time to rest." As the weeks passed, Osage's mood swing continued. It became more frequent and severe. He would often come home late, sometimes smelling of alcohol. He became distant and cold, especially towards Osaretin. She tried to talk to him, but he would brush her off or get very angry. One evening, after putting Idahosa to bed, Osaretin decided it was time to confront Osage. She found him sitting on the balcony, staring into the night. "Osage, we need to talk," she said, sitting down beside him. Osage sighed, not meeting her eyes. "What is it, Osaretin?" "I'm worried about you. You've changed. You're always angry and you've been drinking a lot. Is there something we are doing wrong? What is going on?" Osage finally looked at her, his eyes filled with frustration. Work is stress for Osaretin. You wouldn't understand." "Then help me understand," she pleaded. "We're a team, remember? We're supposed to support each other in every way we can." Osage shook his head. "You don't get it. You run a small store. My job is demanding. It is not the same as yours." Osaretin felt a pang of hurt and tried to stay calm. "I know your job is difficult, but shutting us out and drinking isn't the answer. We're a family. We want to help." Osage stood up abruptly. "I don't need help. I need peace. So leave me the hell alone," he said. As he walked away, Osaretin felt tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't understand what was happening to her once loving husband. She decided to give him some space, hoping he will open up to her eventually. Meanwhile, Ife noticed the changes in her father too. She tried to stay out of his way, but she missed the warm, attentive dad who used to play with her and help her with her assignments. She confided in her mother one evening as they were tidying up the kitchen. "Mom, why is Dad so different now?" Ife asked, her voice filled with worry. Osaretin sighed. "I know, Ife. He's going through something and we need to be patient. Hopefully he will come around." Ife nodded. She didn't seem convinced. "I hope so, Mom. I miss the way things used to be," she added. Months passed and things only got worse. Osage's mood swings turned into aggressive outbursts. He started yelling at Osaretin over minor issues, and his drinking escalated. Osaretin tried to hide her fear and frustration from the children, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. One night, after another heated argument, Osage stormed out of the house, leaving Osaretin in tears. Ife came into the room, looking frightened. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked her mother. Osaretin wiped her tears and tried to smile. "I'm fine, my darling. Go back to bed, okay?" Ife hugged her tightly. "I'm scared, Mom. What if Dad doesn't come back?" "He will, Ife. He just needs some time to cool off," Osaretin said, though she wasn't sure if she believed her own words. As the night wore on, Osaretin sat alone in the living room, her mind racing with worry. She knew something had to change, but she didn't know how to reach Osage. She felt trapped and hopeless, unsure of what the future held for her and her children. The breaking point came one night when Osage's aggression turned physical. They had been arguing about his drinking when he suddenly slapped Osaretin across the face. The shock and pain left her stunned. As she fell to the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. Osage stood over her, his face twisted with anger. "You are always nagging, Osaretin, and I can't take it anymore. Don't make me hit you further," he said. Efe, who had heard the commotion, rushed into the living room. "Dad, stop! Leave Mommy alone," she cried, standing protectively in front of her mother. Osage's expression softened for a moment, but then he turned and stormed out of the house. Osaretin sat on the floor, holding her cheek, feeling broken and defeated. Efe knelt beside her, tears in her eyes. "Mom, are you okay? We need to do something. This can't keep going on." Osaretin hugged her daughter tightly, sobbing. "I know, Efe, I know, and we'll figure something out." That night, Osaretin realized she needed to protect her children no matter what. She couldn't let Osage's behavior continue to harm her family, and she decided to reach out for help, starting with her pastor, Pastor Ighodaro. Pastor Ighodaro had always been supportive to the family, and the next morning, after Osage had left for work, Osaretin called the pastor and arranged a meeting. She explained everything that had been happening, and her voice shaking with emotion. "Pastor, I don't know what to do. Osage has changed so much, and I'm scared for my children," she said, tears streaming down her face. Pastor Ighodaro listened carefully, his expression full of concern. "Osaretin, you are doing the right thing by seeking help. This situation is serious, and you need to protect yourself and your children. Have you talked to Osage about getting professional help?" he asked. "I've tried, but he wouldn't listen. He gets angry whenever I bring it up," Osaretin replied. The pastor nodded. "I will talk to him. In the meantime, you need to consider your safety. If things get worse, don't hesitate to leave. Your children need you to be strong, and don't forget to always commit everything into prayer." Osaretin nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate your support." That evening, Pastor Ighodaro visited their home. Osage was surprised to see him, but welcomed him inside. They sat down together, and the pastor began to talk to Osage about his behavior. "Osage, I'm concerned about you and your family. Osaretin told me what has been happening, and it's clear that you're struggling," the pastor said gently. Osage's face hardened. "I don't need anyone meddling in my life, Pastor. I am fine." The pastor remained calm. "It's okay to ask for help, Osage. We all go through difficult times. What matters is how we deal with them. Your family loves you and wants to support you," Pastor added. For a moment, Osage seemed to soften, but then he shook his head. "I appreciate your concern, Pastor, but this is a private matter." Pastor Ighodaro sighed. "Osage, think about your wife and children. They need you to be the loving husband and father you were. Please consider getting a professional help at least, if you wouldn't talk to your wife." Osage didn't respond, and the pastor knew he had done all he could for now. He prayed with the family and left, hoping his words had made an impact. The following days were tensed. Osaretin tried to stay strong for her children, but the strain was evident. She knew she needed to make a decision very soon, especially after another violent outburst from Osage. One evening, after Osage had left the house in a rage, Osaretin sat down with Efe. "We need to leave, Efe. It's not safe here anymore. I don't want him to keep hitting me again." Efe nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Mom, I totally agree. We need to protect Idahosa." They packed a few essentials and left the house quickly, seeking refuge at Auntie Itoan's home. Auntie Itoan welcomed them with open arms, her face filled with concern. "Osaretin, you are doing the right thing," she said, hugging her tightly. Life at Auntie Itoan's house provided temporary respite from the tension at home. Auntie Itoan was a kind woman, always ready to lend a helping hand. Her home was filled with warmth and love, And for a while, Osaretin, Efe and Idahosa felt a sense of peace they hadn't experienced in a long time. Make yourselves at home, Auntie Itoa said, showing them a cozy guest room. You're safe here. Thank you, Auntie, Osaretin said, her voice filled with gratitude. We appreciate your kindness and we would never take it for granted. Efe and Idahosa settled in quickly, enjoying the new environment. Efe was especially happy to see her mother more relaxed, free from the constant stress and fear that had plagued their lives. However, the peace was short-lived. One evening, Osage showed up at Auntie Itoa's house, demanding to see his family. He looked disheveled and angry, his eyes with rage. Osaretin, Efe, come out here right now, he shouted, pounding on the door. Auntie Itoa stood firm, blocking the entrance. Osage, you need to calm down. This is not the way to solve things. Osage glared at her. They are my family and I have every right to see them. You lost that right when you started hitting them, Auntie Itoa replied sternly. You need to leave, Osage. You can't just force them to come back home. Osaretin, hearing the commotion, came out with Efe. She stood by Auntie Itoa, her heart pounding with fear. Osage, please go home. We need time, she said, trying to stay calm. Osage's expression softened for a moment. Osaretin, I'm sorry. I know I have made mistake, but I can change. Please come back home. Efe stepped forward, her voice trembling. Dad, we are scared. We're not the same anymore. We need you to get help first, and you need one as soon as you can. Osage's face twisted with anger again. Efe, you don't understand. I'm under a lot of pressure, but I can't do this without my family, he said. Osaretin took a deep breath. Osage, we love you, but we can't live like this. We need to get professional help. Then we can talk about coming back. Osage's shoulders slumped in defeat. I'll get help, I promise. Just come home. Osaretin shook her head. Not yet. Show us that you are serious about changing. With a final look of despair, Osage turned and walked away. He left Osaretin and the children, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. After weeks of living with Auntie Itoa, Osaretin felt torn. Osage had promised to change and sought counseling, showing a genuine desire to mend his ways. The children missed their father, and Osaretin longed for the family unity they once had. After many conversations and prayers with Pastor Igodaro, she decided to give Osage another chance. One sunny afternoon, Osaretin gathered her children in the living room of Auntie Itoa's house. Efe, Idahosa, I have some news, she began gently. Your father has been going to counseling and working hard to change. He wants us to come home. Efe's eyes widened with a mix of hope and fear. Are you sure, Mom? What if things go back to the way they were? I understand your worry, my love, Osaretin said, holding her daughter's hand. But believe in second chances. We will take it one day at a time. And if anything goes wrong, we will leave again. And this time, it's going to be final. I promise to protect you and your brother, Idahosa. Efe nodded hesitantly, trusting her mother's judgment. Okay, Mom, let's give Dad another chance. They packed their belongings and returned home, where Osage greeted them with open arms and tears of remorse. Thank you for coming back, he said, his voice choked with emotions. I promise things will be different this time. Osaretin nodded, her heart filled with cautious hope. We are giving you this chance, Osage. Please don't let us down. The first few weeks were promising. Osage was more attentive and involved in family activities. He spent time with Efe and Idahosa, helping with homework and playing games. He even joined Osaretin at the grocery store occasionally, helping out and showing genuine interest in her work. One evening, as the family sat down to dinner, Osage smiled warmly at his wife and children. I've missed this so much and I'm grateful for the chance. Osage looked at his son Idahosa and smiled. My boy, you're growing so well. Efe looked at her father, still wary, but wanted to believe in the change. We've missed you too, Dad. And as the days went by, Osaretin noticed Osage's continued efforts. He attended his counseling sessions regularly and seemed more patient and understanding. She began to relax, thinking that maybe, just maybe, their family could heal. However, Efe's behavior started to change subtly. She became quieter and more withdrawn, often lost in thought. Osaretin noticed the shift but attributed it to the upheaval of recent events. One night, as Osaretin was tucking Idahosa into bed, Efe came to her room, her face pale and her eyes filled with fear. "Mommy, I'm so scared. I don't want to sleep alone," she said. She asked her daughter what was wrong. "Mommy, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Efe," Osaretin said, sitting on the edge of the bed and pulling her daughter close. "What's wrong with you? Why do you sound so scared?" Efe took a deep breath, tears welling up in her eyes. "Mom, it's about Dad. He hasn't really changed like he claimed. He's been hurting me every night." Osaretin felt like her heart stopped beating. "What do you mean, Efe? Hurting you? How?" Efe's voice trembled as she spoke. "He often comes to my room and does things to me, things that hurt and make me scared. I didn't know how to tell you, and I thought you wouldn't believe me, but he warned me never to speak about it to anyone." Osaretin's heart shattered into a million pieces. She hugged her daughter tightly, and tears started to stream down her face. "Efe, I'm so sorry. I should have seen it all, but I believe you, and I promise I will protect you." Efe sobbed into her mother's shoulder, relieved that her secret was finally out. "I was so scared, Mom. I didn't know what to do." "We'll leave tonight," Osaretin said, her voice filled with determination. "We'll go back to Auntie Itoa's place, and I won't let him hurt you again." Efe nodded, believing in her mother's words. Quietly, they packed their belongings, careful not to wake Idahosa or alert Osage. Once everything was ready, Osaretin gently woke up Idahosa, explaining that they were going to Auntie Itoa's house. "But Mom, why?" Idahosa asked, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Because it's safer there, my love," Osaretin said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We need to protect your sister." They left the house in the dead of the night, hearts pounding with fear and uncertainty. As they walked to Auntie Itoa's place, Osaretin felt a mix of anger, guilt, and sorrow. She felt so bitter, so betrayed, and so helpless. She had trusted Osage, believed in his promises, and now their daughter had suffered because of it. Auntie Itoa welcomed them back with open arms, not asking any questions, but promising the comfort and safety they desperately needed. "Thank you, Auntie," Osaretin said, her voice breaking. "We had to leave. It wasn't safe." "You did the right thing, Osaretin," Auntie Itoa said, hugging her tightly. "You and your children are always welcome here. This is your home too." Over the next few days, Osaretin took steps to ensure their safety. She contacted the police, updating them on the situation. Efe started to see a therapist, working through the trauma and fear. Osaretin focused on providing a stable and loving environment for her children, determined to heal as a family. One afternoon, Pastor Igodaro visited them at Auntie Itoa's house. He had heard about the recent event and wanted to offer his support. "Osaretin, I'm so sorry for what you and your children have gone through," he said, his voice filled with compassion. "We are here for you, and you don't have to face this alone." "Thank you, Pastor," Osaretin replied, grateful for his kindness. "It's been difficult, but we are trying to move forward." With the support of Auntie Itoa, Osaretin began to rebuild her life step by step. Efe and Idahosa slowly adapted to their new normal. Efe found solace in her therapy and her mother. Despite their best effort, life was not without its challenges. Efe approached her mother with a look of uncertainty in her eyes. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked. "Of course, my darling," Osaretin said, setting aside the vegetables she was chopping. Efe shifted uncomfortably, her eyes barely above a whisper. "Mom, I'm scared. I still feel like he's going to come back to hurt us. I still feel so scared. I can't peacefully sleep at night." Osaretin's heart ached for her daughter. She reached out and held Efe's hand. "Efe, I promise you, we are safe here. I've taken every measure to protect us. Osage will never hurt us again." Efe nodded, but the fear in her eyes remained. "I know you're trying, Mom. It's just hard to forget everything that happened. I understand, my love. It will take time," Osaretin said softly. "Healing takes a lot of time, but we have each other and we'll get through this together." Despite the progress they were making, Osaretin couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Efe had become more withdrawn and very anxious, and Osaretin suspected there was more to her daughter's pain than she had initially revealed. One night, Efe came to her room with her face pale. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. "My love, what is it?" Osaretin asked, concerned. Efe took a deep breath, tears welling up in her eyes. "Mom, I think I'm pregnant, and I don't know how to tell you," Efe said. Osaretin felt like the ground had pulled out from her, and she struggled to find her voice. "Pregnant? Efe, how?" "It's Dad," Efe whispered, her voice breaking. "He hurts me so many times and I didn't even know what to do." Osaretin's heart shattered into a million pieces. She pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her eyes. "Oh, Efe, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better. But we are going to get through this, I promise." That night, Osaretin cried so much. She felt like she had failed her daughter. She regretted ending up with Osage so much. The next morning, Osaretin took Efe to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor confirmed Efe's pregnancy and provided them with information and resources to help them navigate the difficult road ahead. As they left the hospital, Osaretin knew that their journey was far from over. She felt a mix of anger, guilt, sorrow, and betrayal, but she was determined to protect her daughter and ensure that justice was served. Back at Auntie Itoa's house, Osaretin sat down with Efe to discuss their next step. "Efe, we are going to report to the police," Osaretin said firmly. "Osage needs to be held accountable for what he has done." Efe nodded, her eyes filled with resolve. "I want him to pay for what he did, Mom. He can't just hurt anyone else." Together, they went to the police station and filed a formal complaint against Osage. The officers took their statement seriously and assured them that they would investigate the matter thoroughly, although they lacked hard evidence. Meanwhile, Efe continued to attend therapy, finding strength in their sessions and the support of her family. She also confided in her best friend, Esosa, who offered a listening ear and unwavering support. "Efe, you are one of the bravest people I know," Esosa said during one of their conversations. "I'm here for you no matter what." And as weeks passed, Osaretin and Efe focused on preparing for the future. They attended prenatal classes together, learning about pregnancy and childbirth. The day finally came when Osaretin and her children moved out of Auntie Itoa's house. It was a bittersweet moment. Auntie Itoa has been a pillar of support during their most challenging times, but Osaretin knew it was time for her family to forge their own path. With Auntie Itoa's blessings and support, they had found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, far from their previous place. As they packed their belongings, Efe and Idahosa felt a mix of excitement and sadness. Osaretin made sure to express her gratitude to Auntie Itoha, who had been more than just a relative. She had been his sanctuary and a helpmate in the time of need. "Auntie Itoha," Osaretin said, hugging her tightly, "we can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us. You've been our rock, and we love you so much." Auntie Itoha smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You don't need to thank me, Osaretin. You and the children are family. I'm proud of how strong you've all been, and this is just the beginning for all of you. You are always welcome to my house, no matter what. This is your house too." Efe and Idahosa echoed their thanks, hugging Auntie Itoha warmly. "We will miss you, Auntie," Efe said, her voice trembling with emotions. "I'll miss you too, my darling," Auntie Itoha replied, gently patting Efe's back. "But remember, my door is always open for you." As they loaded the last of their belongings into the car, Osaretin took one last look at the house that had been their refuge. With a deep breath, she started the car, ready to face the new chapter in their lives. The new house, though modest, felt like a fresh start. It had a small garden where Idahosa could play, and if a room was filled with sunlight, making it a perfect place for her to study and relax. They spent the first few days unpacking and settling in, making the space their own. Osarugwe, who had moved with them to help with house chores, quickly got to work, making the new house feel like home. She cleaned, organized, and cooked, her presence a comforting constant in their lives. One evening, as they sat down for their first dinner in the house, Osaretin looked around the table at her family and felt a sense of peace. They were together and they were safer now. Here's to new beginnings, Osaretin said, raising her glass of water in a toast. We've been through so much, but we have each other, and that's all that matters. To new beginnings, Efe and Idahosa echoed, clinking their glasses with their mothers. As the weeks went by, Osaretin focused on her grocery store, which continued to thrive thanks to the support of her loyal customers, and Efe threw herself into her studies, determined to make the most of her fresh start. Idahosa, oblivious to the complexities around him, filled the house with his innocent laughter and joy. Despite the positive changes, Osaretin couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She noticed subtle changes in Efe's behavior. Efe felt more withdrawn and anxious. One afternoon, as Osaretin was in the grocery store, Osarugwe approached her with a worried expression. "Madam, I need to talk to you about something important," Osarugwe said, her voice filled with concern. Osaretin looked up from her work, sensing the urgency in Osarugwe's tone. "What is it?" "I've noticed that Mr. Osage has been coming around to the house, even when you are not there. He talks to Efe, and she seems very scared." Osaretin felt a surge of anger and fear. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes, madam," Osarugwe confirmed. "I didn't want to worry you, but I thought you should know." Osaretin's mind raced with worry. She decided to confront Osage the next time he came to visit. That evening, she discussed the situation with Efe. "Efe, has your father been bothering you?" Osaretin asked gently. Efe looked down, her hands trembling. "Mom, he's been trying to talk to me. He says he's sorry and wants to make things right, but I don't trust him and I hate him so much for putting me in this condition." Osaretin felt a surge of anger. "You don't have to talk to him, Efe. I'm going to put a stop to this." A few days later, Osage showed up unannounced, claiming he wanted to see Idahosa, his son. Osaretin stood firm at the door, not letting him inside. "Osage, you're not welcome here," she said firmly. "You have caused enough pain. If you want to see Idahosa, it will be strictly on my terms and supervised." Osage tried to protest, but Osaretin wouldn't budge. "You've lost my trust, Osage. Leave now or I'll call the police. I don't know why they even let you out in the first place." Seeing her resolve, Osage reluctantly left, but the encounter left Osaretin shaking. She couldn't understand why he was still trying to insert himself into their lives after all the damage he had caused. A week later, while Osaretin was at work, Osarugwe noticed Osage walking near the house again. She immediately called Osaretin, who rushed home, her heart pounding with fear. When Osaretin arrived, she found Osage trying to talk to Efe through the window. Efe looked terrified, and Osarugwe was trying to keep her distance from him. "Osage, leave now," Osaretin shouted, her voice shaking with anger. "You're not welcome here. Stop troubling my family and I." Osage turned, his face marks of guilt and frustration. "I just want to talk to Efe. I'm trying to make amends." "You've done enough," Osaretin said. "If you come near my family again, I'll call the police." Osage left, muttering under his breath, and Osaretin gathered her children and Osarugwe inside, locking all the doors and windows. That night, as Osaretin lay awake, she realized that she couldn't let Osage continue to disrupt their lives. She needed to take stronger action to protect her family. She decided to file for a restraining order, ensuring that Osage would be legally prohibited from coming near them. The next morning, she visited the local courthouse and filed out the necessary paperwork. The process was emotionally exhausting, but Osaretin knew it was the right thing to do. A week later, the restraining order was granted, and Osage was served with the papers. Osaretin hoped this would be the end of their ordeal, but she remained vigilant, knowing that they needed to be prepared for anything. Despite the legal protection, the emotional toll on the family was significant. Efe became more withdrawn, and even Idahosa sensed the tension in the household. Osaretin tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the constant stress was taking its toll. One evening, Osarugwe approached Osaretin with a concerned expression. "Madam, I think you should talk to Efe. She seemed very upset." Osaretin found Efe sitting alone in her room, staring out the windows. She sat down beside her daughter "Ife, how are you feeling?" she asked. Ife sighed, tears filling her eyes. "I'm just so tired. I don't understand why Dad wouldn't leave us alone. After everything he has done, I feel like I can't escape him. I keep seeing him in my dream." Osaretin's heart ached for her daughter. "I know it's been incredibly hard, Effie, but we are safe now, and we have the restraining order. He can't come near us anymore." Effie nodded, but the fear in her eyes remained. "I just want to move on, Mom. I want to forget everything that's happening, but the baby inside of me keeps making me remember." "We will, Effie," Osaretin promised. "It will take time, but we'll get through this together." To help ease Effie's anxiety, Osaretin enrolled her in a local support group for survivors of abuse. The group provided a safe space for Effie to share her experiences and connect with others who understood her pain. Slowly, Effie began to open up, finding strength in the stories and support of her peers. Meanwhile, Osaretin continued to focus on her grocery store and the well-being of her family. With Osarugwe's help, she was able to manage the house chores and spend more quality time with Efe and Idaosa. Life slowly began to normalize for Osaretin and her children in their new home. Efe continued to attend her support group and found solace in her studies. Osaretin managed the grocery store with renewed sense of purpose and determined to provide a stable future for her family. Weeks turned into months and Efe's pregnancy became more apparent. Despite the physical changes, she remained determined to continue her studies. Osaretin and Osarugwe's made sure that she was comfortable and had everything she needed. One evening, while they were having dinner, Osaretin noticed that Efe seemed particularly quiet. "Efe, is everything okay?" she asked gently. Efe looked up, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Mom, I've been thinking about something and I want to talk to you about it." "Of course, darling, what is it?" Osaretin asked, her voice filled with concern. Efe took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about the baby. I know it's going to be hard, but I want to keep it. I want to give it a chance at a better life." Osaretin felt a surge of emotion. She reached across the table and took Efe's hand. "My darling, whatever you decide, I'll be here for you and I will support you in any way that I can. And I'm so sorry for how you feel." Efe nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Thank you, Mom. I just want to do what's right for the baby." As the months passed, Efe continued to attend school, her belly growing with each passing week. The support of her family and friends gave her the strength to face each day with courage. Osaretin worked tirelessly to provide for her family, her love for her children driving her forward. As the days passed and Efe's due date approached, excitement filled the household. The nursery was ready, filled with all the essentials for the new baby. Osaretin and Efe eagerly awaited the arrival of the newest member of their family. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Efe winced in pain. Osaretin's heart skipped a beat as she rushed to her daughter's side. "Efe, are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling with concern. Efe nodded, her face contorted with pain. "I think the baby is coming, Mom." Osaretin's heart raced with anticipation. She called a taxi to take them to the hospital. Osarugwe stayed behind with Idaosa, her reassuring presence providing a sense of calm amid the chaos. At the hospital, the doctor confirmed that Efe was in labor. Osaretin held her daughter's hand tightly, offering words of encouragement as they waited for the arrival of the baby. Hours passed, each moment filled with a mix of hope and fear. Finally, the moment they had been waiting for arrived, but it was not the joyous occasion they had envisioned. As the doctors delivered the baby, the room fell silent. Osaretin's heart sank as she saw the expression on their faces. "I'm so sorry," one of the doctors said softly. "There was nothing we could do. The baby didn't make it." Tears filled her eyes as she held her lifeless newborn in her arm. Osaretin wrapped her daughter in a tight embrace, their grief mingling together in a dimly lit hospital room. "I'm so sorry, Efe," Osaretin whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Efe sobbed into her mother's shoulders, her heart shattered by the loss of their child. The days that followed were filled with profound sense of loss and emptiness. Efe and Osaretin clung to each other for support, their grief a heavy burden that carried them together. But as time passed, the rawness of their grief began to ease. replaced by a quiet acceptance of their loss. The memory of their baby would always hold a special place in their hearts. One day, as Osaretin was closing up at the grocery store for the night, she received a phone call that would change everything. It was from a friend who worked at the local police station. "Osaretin, I have some news for you," her friend said, his voice grave. Osaretin's heart raced with anticipation. "What is it?" "It is about Osage," her friend replied. "He's been arrested and charged with sexually abusing a colleague at his work." Shock washed over Osaretin as she processed the news. Osaretin couldn't help but feel a mix of emotion as she learned of her ex-husband's crimes. Part of her felt relief that he would finally face justice for the pain he had caused, but another part couldn't shake the sadness of realizing the depth of his betrayal. As the trial progressed, Osaretin found herself grappling with the conflicting emotions. On one hand, she wanted to see Osage held accountable for his actions. On the other, she couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for the man she had once loved. In the courtroom, Osaretin sat with a heavy heart as the evidence against Osage was presented. Witness after witness testified to his predatory behavior, and the weight of their words hung heavy in the air. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Osage continued to deny his guilt. His arrogance only served to fuel Osaretin's determination to see him held accountable for his actions. As the trial came to a close, Osage was found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to several years in prison, ensuring that he would never again be able to harm another innocent victim. For Osaretin, the verdict brought a sense of closure, but the scars of her daughter's trauma still lingered. She knew that no amount of justice could undo the pain Efe had endured. Back at home, Efe greeted her mother with a weary smile. The trial had taken its toll on both of them, but they found solace in each other's presence. "Are you okay, Mom?" Efe asked, her voice filled with concern. Osaretin nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm okay, Efe. I'm just so proud of you. You've been so strong through all of this." Efe reached out and hugged her mother tightly. "It's okay, Mom." Osaretin cried like a baby. She was so hurt and broken. She wished she could go back in time and pay a little more attention to her daughter or never met Osage. In the days that followed, Osaretin felt like a renewed sense had washed over her. She couldn't change the past, but could use her experience to make a difference in the future. She decided to become an advocate for survival of sexual abuse, determined to ensure that no one would suffer in silence as her daughter had. She spoke out at rallies and campaigns in the hopes of inspiring others to break their silence and seek justice. As the years passed, Osaretin's activism grew, her voice becoming a powerful force for change in her community. She worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the prevalence of sexual abuse in children, lobbying for better support services and tougher laws to protect the most vulnerable members of society. And though the pain of their past would always be a part of their story, Osaretin and her family found strength in their shared journey of healing and redemption. Together, they stood as a beacon of hope, a shining light to the darkness of abuse, and fighting for a future where every child is protected. A key lesson from the story is the need for parents to pay close attention to their children. When parents are attentive, they can notice signs of abuse and protect their children from harm. Also, by believing and supporting children, parents can help them seek justice and hold abusers accountable for their actions. Another important moral lesson from this story is the significance of accountability and justice. Osage's eventual arrest and conviction for his crimes underscores the importance of holding perpetrators accountable for their actions. Justice is crucial for the healing process of survivors and serves as a deterrent to potential abusers. Thanks for watching this captivating story on African Stories and Folktales. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories. Thank you.